Okay, everyone, thank you so much for joining. I'll call this public hearing of the University Heights Service and Utilities Committee to order. This is the second in a series of public hearings to allow members of the committee and council to hear members of the public and receive comments regarding the now finalized solid waste study. We had our first hearing last month, and the mayor and service director gave a wonderful overview of the potential cost savings and their vision for the plan going forward, not only for the way that we collect rubbish in the city, but also for what changes in the manner in which we pick up solid waste may mean for our service department. That hearing has been recorded, and if you look at the first approximately 20 minutes of that hearing, you could hear that vision and presentation from each of them. I see in attendance this evening, we have Vice Mayor Weiss on the line, as well as Councilperson Pardee, and we have the mayor on the line, as well as Councilwoman Berry, and the service director, Jeff Picorni. Give me one moment while I just look at my participant list here. In order to allow the most orderly presentation of individuals who wanted to speak and to allow people to get in line, we created a registration system which allowed individuals to access the survey so that they could make a presentation today. And I just want to make sure that I have everyone noted here. I have my list pulled up. One moment. Now, I just want to double check here to make sure I'm not reading off of my old list. Wynn, did you register again?
No.
Okay, thank you. Then first on our list today is Paul Miller, 2370 Charney. Paul, are you on the line? And actually, before we get started, one moment. Okay, wonderful. I have that, Jeffrey. Paul, if you'd like to go ahead, you have the floor. Paul, are you on the line? Let me just check my participant list again. I'm not seeing Paul Miller on the line. I'll move on to the next one. Ari Adler, 2540 Milton. Ari, you have the floor.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, is it important that I put on video, or is it okay if it's just voice?
It's fine for just to be voice.
Okay. Yeah, there were just a few things I wanted to mention. I moved here from Overland Park, Kansas, where we had, I think, a similar system to what we would potentially be moving to, where we had one large green garbage can for the regular waste, and like a little bit smaller blue one for recycling. So I just wanted to compare how that went to what the city's doing now. So there were, I made a little bit of a list for myself, but in general, I preferred that system much better to what we have now for several reasons. One of them, for example, is with animals. I had no issues with the big garbage cans with animals because it came with a lid that couldn't be moved. It was like a much heavier thing. So like I have an issue now that animals will climb on top of my garbage cans, knock it over, and like be able to remove the lid and spill out the content because it's so small and they have such a weight limit. Sorry, make sure you're muted.
Sorry about that, Ari. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah. So also I have a picture I took on Monday morning that basically shows that probably about half of my neighbors actually bring their garbage to the curb anyways, but I think because of the restrictions, so many of them like use larger garbage bags that are hard to fit in the little canisters. And very often animals will actually rip open those garbage bags because it's really easy for them to do that. And you'll get like chicken bones and all kinds of waste just littered by the curb of the street, which, you know, again, is something that I never experienced with the other system where you just have the two larger cans. The second thing I wanted to mention is recycling. I don't recycle here only because it's kind of confusing and difficult. If I had a big blue canister like I had in Kansas, so I figured, you know, I recycle there because it was very straightforward. You just put in all your, you know, juice and milk containers and whatnot. And, you know, I don't know exactly how it would work here. We were allowed to put, like, even if you had like a larger box, let's say that you couldn't really fit in, but like you could put it next to it and the person who was driving that truck would just come out and like grab it and flip it in. You know, it wasn't like every house had this. And if every now and then there was a couple of larger things that didn't fit in the garbage can, so you know they could just go and toss it in. One thing that you know I found particularly annoying here is that there were a few times that the garbage people didn't take my garbage. Once they just missed it, and the other time, now I actually do use the system where I leave it behind my house because I might as well take advantage of it. You know, I think I'm basically my only neighbor really uses it fully. Ironically enough, but like there were a few times where either they just didn't get it, they overlooked it, or there were a couple of times where they said it was too heavy, even though I was within the, you know, the gallon limit, and I just often would just pick it up myself and put it in the back. Like they claimed there was water inside. I don't know what they were talking about. There was never any water. But like in Kansas, I never needed to call them to come back because they missed a pickup. So that was that. I also wanted to say that their garbage cans, because it was like one big, extremely heavy thing, so it was much sturdier. I've already lost a lid here to one of my garbage cans. And you'll find like, you know, we can, especially like this time of year, we can get some very rainy, windy days. And the little light garbage cans, especially after pickup, are just flying all over the place. They'll land in the street. But that never happened in Kansas. And I don't know, you need like a hurricane force wind because those things were so big that they basically would stay where they were, even if they were empty. And I felt like my garbage cans here do have wheels, but there's only has, you know, so big size wheels you're going to find on a small garbage can. So I find it when I do have to wheel it, like if I'm using the driveway or whatnot, I find it, you know, it's kind of difficult sometimes to wheel with the little wheels, and because it's lighter and smaller, so it, you know, I wind up just dragging it a lot. Over there, that never had the issue because it's again a much sturdier, heavier thing with which had much larger wheels. You know, I read the reason why I know about this. I read an article about it in Cleveland.com. So over there, it had mentioned that people said that, you know, it was easier for elderly people and whatnot if they had, you know, with the current system, which might be true, but if you know, if the savings to with the city's budget are really going to be very significant, you know, I mean, just to ask a neighbor, you know, once a week to bring your garbage cans to the front, or maybe hire somebody. I'm sure you can get a teenager for half the price of what it's costing the city just to move the garbage cans back and forth. You know, I feel like that's, you know, I'm sure that's very, very doable for people. So overall, for my personal experience, and I know that some people will have like a lot of these little garbage cans because they make a lot of garbage. We personally, I have a family of 8, and you know, we were able to fit in the garbage cans in Kansas, and I'm sure I could do it still. Oh, over here, I figure if somebody really needed an extra garbage can, there would probably be a way to work that out with the city to arrange that they could get an extra one. I'm sure, you know, for the right price. I'm sure, you know, those type of things were possible. So, the last thing is that also, like, I felt like, anything I just put in the garbage can, I knew like they would take. Like over here, sometimes it leads to a lot of confusion, or like, if a bag opens up inside or whatnot. And also, it's like if you're using the bigger garbage bags, it's gonna be very hard to really get in more than one into the little garbage cans. That wasn't really a problem with the big garbage cans, because they were so much bigger. And so, so for a whole host of reasons, I very much liked the system over there. Yeah, I'm going to, I think I said my piece. Sorry if I went on and on, but thank you so much for listening and giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts.
Ari, thank you so much for the contribution and for your thoughts on the matter. I appreciate the perspective of somebody who has lived elsewhere with this program. Neil Gould, you're up. You have the floor, sir.
Okay, thanks for having me here. I reread the study and tried to figure out several things based on how it was written. And I noticed there's a lot of information that's missing that's probably relevant to the conclusions that they try to draw. So rather than go through all of that and say that I had a lot of problems with it as it's written, just pointing out a few things that I think are critical. One is that there isn't any information about the number of people of age, of elders or whatnot, in here. There's no comparison between this community and other communities with regard to that. There's, with regard to the comparisons that they did make, trying to estimate the savings and costs, what they did was compared, what I did rather, was compared all the communities that had full manual processing like ours. And I did not find a direct correlation between the size of the population and the actual costs. Some were far below our costs, even though they had a larger population, and some were far below our costs, even though they had a fraction of our population, and still provided the same services. So I decided to change my focus, is where I'm going with this. I think that the most helpful portion of this study has to do with their recommended existing program improvements and whatnot. One is that in alternative 2.1, the survey, I think it should be mandatory. I think it should be written. And what I would suggest is, for example, to have in the mosaic 1 page of pro change comments and 1 page of those who oppose it, and then a full survey that would be collected and compiled, and you'd be able to use that as some statistical information that would be beyond what they have in the survey. One of the things that they also suggested was that we'd have to have Americans with Disability Act compliance. And that has a lot of implications. The costs of the equipment to do that, the method that you're going to do that, et cetera, and so forth, could actually almost eliminate any savings that you would have by converting to the street pickup. But that would depend on how many people in the community qualify for that. It would depend on the age of people in the community that are likely to qualify for it at some point. And that information is not included in the survey, in the study rather, excuse me. 3.1 suggests rerouting the pickups. And they said that you could save between 10 or 20%, 10 to 25% of the cost of doing the current manual pickups just by rerouting it. Well, that sounds like a significant amount of money that could be saved. If that hasn't been done, it should be done. And finally, the services and the cost of services, there should be a checkbox or what have you on there, because along with their Americans for Disability Act, they suggested the possibility that people may be willing to pay a fee to have the services as they currently exist. And I think that would be a checkbox on the survey that you would.
We should pay for backyard pickup.
Pardon? In other words, if you want to retain that service as it is, you'd say you'd be willing to pay a fee to do that. And if you add up all these fees and savings, they may completely negate any advantage there is to making a change to the conversion to the street pickup to begin with. And then if you factor in such things as the fact as the diminishing the value of our property because we're diminishing the city services, then it could completely make the move irrelevant. So I think that we should follow up with some really in-depth information to get at what the real costs of doing this and the real savings are. And if we do so, we might have a better idea of where to go from here. That pretty much sums it up for me. Did you have something you wanted to add? Okay.
Neil, thank you so much for the comments. Nathan Stable, 2378 Charney. Nathan,
Yeah.
you have the floor.
Oh, thank you. I kind of wanted to echo a little bit of what Ari was saying previously, as being somebody who I lived in a few other cities in Ohio, including Cleveland proper, and never had an issue with trash collection ever when it comes to a system like what we're looking at. I have elderly parents, elderly family members that also live in communities that use very similar trash collection to what we're seeing. And I mean, everybody figures it out. And one of the things for me is I've only lived in University Heights for 3 years now, but when I first moved here, it took us like a year to figure out what to do with our trash, because I've never seen anything like the way we do trash collection here. I didn't need the whole study to tell me that we're spending a lot of money to provide this service, because every Thursday morning on my street, it's like SEAL Team 6 is running around trying to collect everybody's garbage. And I think the upfront cost of some sort of automated truck or some sort of system to pick things up would be high, but it's pretty clear that this is an expensive way to go about collecting trash, and it's a complicated way to go about collecting trash. And I'm not saying that just because everybody else is doing something that it's the right way to do things, but it's not like other college towns like Bowling Green, Athens, Akron. They all do things similarly to what we're looking at changing to. And it's not like property values there have sunk because they use, curbside trash pickup as opposed to having, gators drive into your driveway all over the place. So for me, it seemed like kind of a common sense approach to do it the way that other communities around us are doing it, like South Euclid. And I just wanted to make sure that there were some people that maybe came from other communities that had experienced it before. So I'm glad that Ari spoke before too. And to me, it seems like common sense to, move on from the complicated system we have now to save some money so that we can use that money for other services that can increase our property values. To get to Neil's point, we're spending a lot of money on trash collection. That money could probably be used for some other things. So that's all I wanted to say. And I appreciate the time. Thank you, Justin.
Thanks so much for joining us and for the comments. David Wasserstrom, 4169 Silsby. David, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I was muted. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you. And thank you for the time. I will keep my comments brief. I did not have an opportunity to review the study, so I apologize in advance if my comments / questions were considered and mentioned in there. I guess in general, I am for the idea, and I like the idea of utilizing money for other purposes. Money is tight, I understand that. I guess I have one question and one concern. Question is with curbside pickup, I'm unsure how like irregular items would be handled that aren't to be included in like a single receptacle. I mean, earlier this year, I had an old lawnmower that I put next to my garbage, and the trash man was kind enough to pick it up and haul it off. So I'm just curious how things like that would be handled if this were a fully automated system. And then my concern would be of an aesthetic nature. Once your garbage is collected and your can is on your tree lawn in an empty state, you know, it seems like it would be incumbent upon you as the resident to take it back and put it in your backyard. It would be unfortunate if neighbors were irresponsible and left them out there for several days. So if this were indeed adopted, I would hope that there would be some way to encourage neighbors through voluntary or other means to be able to take those back to their backyards in a timely manner. And that's all I have to say. And again, I appreciate your efforts and I appreciate the time.
Thank you so much, David. Next on our list, Bill Carlson. Bill, you have the floor.
Hi, thanks. Since last time I perused the study again, and I had a couple questions. What does the Kubota, what fuel source does that use?
Gasoline.
What do the garbage trucks use?
The Kubota actually
Also
uses
gasoline.
diesel, and
Oh,
the
diesel?
garbage trucks also use diesel.
So I looked in that study and I couldn't find any reference to the fuel. So why aren't fuel costs a consideration? Because seemingly if we eliminated the Kubotas with curbside pickup, we wouldn't be paying diesel for them.
The fuel costs were actually included into the study, but they were included in the way of looking at the total budget for solid waste collection, as were the cost of the vehicles listed there. They itemized out the vehicles, but they did not itemize out all the general operating costs like fuel.
Okay, so there's no way to isolate the Kubota diesel cost?
There would be if we wanted to look. We use fuel cards for filling those vehicles. So we could probably pull out what costs there was in filling the Kubotas with diesel and what cost there is in filling the garbage trucks with diesel.
I mean, I feel like that could be significant depending on how much it is.
As opposed to not using fuel, or what?
If we got rid of the Kubotas and did curbside pickup only, we would save on not buying Kubotas and not buying diesel.
True, right.
Do you know offhand, there's an O&M cost, 58,000 something. Do you know, is that mostly for the garbage trucks or for the Kubotas?
I don't have the breakdown of that number.
Okay, but seemingly that might also decrease because there would be less maintenance on the Kubotas if we got rid of them and switched to curbside.
True, yes. There would be less maintenance. And part of that is reflected in the study as you get into the section where they look at the costs of maintenance. You'll see with a reduction in staff and equipment, there's also a reduction in operating costs.
Okay. Yeah, I was just trying to break it out for the Kubotas and I couldn't find that.
Yeah, they didn't break it out just for the Kubotas.
Okay, thanks. I guess my other comments, I do think a survey is a good idea. I think Neil had mentioned that. It'd be nice to I guess, get the input from everyone, because there seem to be some people that very much support the current system and some that want to change. I think that'd be a good idea to get their input. I guess my last comment is I support curbside. I've lived in other areas with curbside. It's always been fine for me. I definitely do not like the little blue plastic bags. I'd prefer to get a tub, even if we have to do the tub in the backyard. I think it'd be more environmentally friendly just to have a tub or a bucket or something. I don't know. I guess I generally support switching to one of these new systems that'll save us money and allow service personnel to do other jobs that we might be contracting other entities for. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for the comments. One moment. Jeff Pearl. Jeff, if you could state your house and street name, house number, street name, and then you have the floor.
Sure. 2579 Lafayette Drive.
Thank you. Floor is yours.
All right, thank you. My wife Edna and I have been residents here for quite a number of years, about 47 years. Edna lived in University Heights before that. And the city is always, as far back as I recall, has always been known as the City of Beautiful Homes. And among other reasons for that is the fact that we don't have trash cans out on the street. And most other communities around us do that. And it looks rather unsightly. And it's one of the nice features in University Heights. Shaker Heights does this similarly. When we had one of our sons in Cleveland Heights and one in Lakewood, they have to take things out to the curb and it really looks bad. And I would be very disappointed if University Heights winds up following that way of taking care of trash. One thing that I had noted in conversation that had been mentioned by a couple of people were about recycling. And that is very, very confusing right now, how that's handled. It used to be somewhat simpler, although this isn't uniquely a University Heights problem per se. The idea of the plastic bags is not a horrible thing, but perhaps the concept of having cans for recycling, a blue can, might not be a bad idea and could be something that could be considered as somewhat of a combination system. That is to say, that you could have recycling picked up from a can as opposed to the bags, if that would simplify that process. And I think it has to be explained to residents better as to how to handle recycling. But back to the main matter at hand, the study is extremely detailed. And one of my major concerns, besides talking about the look, is the age concern with quite a number of residents of University Heights, and in particular in streets where there are homes with long driveways. That certainly would make it more difficult for people to be able to take trash to the street. In looking over the study, because it's so detailed, I think unless I missed something, it sure seemed to me that when you break it down on a cost per home, the actual savings is truly not even that great. So it seemed to me that that may have gotten lost in the shuffle. But I would absolutely be for keeping the system as is or with little change. But to be able to keep trash pickup in the back as it has been for as long as I can remember would certainly be preferred by my wife and myself.
Wonderful. Jeff, thank you so much for the comments. Lorinda and John Messer, you're on next.
And you need our address?
Yeah.
Please, just the house number and street name.
2471 Dysart.
Thank you so much.
And I had a question and a concern, but I would at the beginning also add that not having the sight of trash along the street is one of the things that has always made University Heights seem special. Get to drive around the other neighborhoods and it just seems just not nearly as attractive. And that is a kind of a big deal. But the thing that I was interested in, having read the reports, was that some of the savings seem to be that there wouldn't be as many city employees involved in the collection. And then it said, well, and so there would be more people available that they could afford to work on streets and sewers and so on. My concern is people losing their jobs. Would it be the men who are currently picking up the garbage would then be transferred over to doing other work? Or would they be losing their jobs and we would hire some other more expert in road fixing and sewer fixing?
The manner in which the reallocation would happen would be up to the administration, of course, and I believe that the mayor and service director addressed this a bit in their presentation that I referred to from the last meeting. Mayor, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the plan would be to we need to maintain 10 positions in order to continue to do our snow removal. So the one moment. So the difference between what we have now and what we would need to do the snow removal would be reduced over time by individuals who left the city and weren't rehired and individuals who have retired. Mayor, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
We have also slated, and it's pursuant to the collective bargaining agreement we have with the representation for our service employees, 4 part-time employees that make about $14 an hour that work 3 days a week, almost exclusively, if not exclusively, on garbage pickup. We would not need them. And so yeah, we would not keep those positions if we were to make this switch. Mm-hmm. However, the full-time unionized staff, most of them have the designation laborer, but they have a number of skills and they all do other things besides pick up trash. We would not be laying off or letting go of those folks just to bring in different ones. The idea is that we have people who can do a number of things for the city, but spend more of their time doing trash pickup than those other tasks. Jeff, is there anything you care to add?
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
No, okay. I think that clarifies it. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Wonderful. Was there anything else that you wanted to add, Lerner and John?
No, that was addressing that particular issue and going and saying that we too cherish the non-street pickup as making something
Okay.
special to University Heights.
If I could just
Thank you
interject.
so much for the comment.
Yes, Councilperson Gould, if I could just interject one other point of information that I think some folks may find of interest because it's come up. And my source for this is the Cuyahoga County Planning's data book, which came out a couple months ago. But contained in the data book on page 18 is demographic information for the 59 different communities in Cuyahoga County. And it lists that University Heights, that 11.5% of our population is senior. There was a question as to how many seniors we have in our community, and it's 11.5% of our population. That, according to the data book, which then cites to 2018 U.S. Census estimate.
Mayor, what was the percentage in Lakewood, which was one of the major comparison communities?
In Lakewood, it is 12.4% senior. So more seniors in Lakewood than here.
Thank you.
If I could jump in on a question relative to that,
Mhm.
I'm Richard Kenny. Is John Carroll population included in that? Because that would distort significantly.
A portion would be because they spend the majority of their time of the year here in the city. Beechwood, by comparison, has a senior rate of 29.8%.
So my point being is most of John Carroll gets picked up on campus by these big commercial waste companies.
There are over 1,000 rentals in University Heights. Not all of them are John Carroll rentals, but.
Right. No, I understand. But there's a lot of kids in dorms, and is the study including that is really my only question.
No, because the city doesn't pick up the trash from the dorm.
No, I meant the county study that you're referring to. When it talked about the 11% percentage of being elderly,
Yeah.
were they including or excluding the people on campus in dorms?
Presumably they would be including.
Again, that would distort it, which would mean that if they were included, then the real number would be higher,
Well,
15 to 18%.
Characterization that students aren't real residents of our community.
No, what I'm saying is that they
Mr.
are getting.
Richard, I understand
Yeah.
your point, and I appreciate the back and forth. I take your point, and Mayor, I appreciate the additional data set. I'm going to move on my list
Okay.
to the next person who has asked to speak.
Sure.
And
I just
Richard, if
wanted
you'd
to
like me to
provide
return to you for, certainly. Richard, if you'd like me to return to you after I go through individuals who've already put their name on the list, I'd be happy to add you on. Just let me know. In the
I would
chat.
like that. Thank you.
Yes, sir. S. Sachs, you are next on our list. If you could give your first and last name, house number, and street name.
Thank you very much for this. Sherry Sachs, 14474 Summerfield Road. Okay. First of all, top of my list was the survey. So I thank Neil Gould once again for that great idea. And what I hadn't thought of was to put it in the Mosaic magazine. That would be just really terrific because all the residents receive that. It won't be extra postage and people can rip it out and send it in at their own expense or drop it off at City Hall for no expense. And I do think that would be a nice, thoughtful survey, not just the solid waste, but also addressing ideas about the recycling and all these little components. That's a little, the components that are being brought up. I think they're all very good to hear the perspective of our neighbors. I've worked with seniors in my professional life for pretty much 40 years, okay? And on a sunny day, without precipitation, rain or snow or ice, to bring the trash to, it's 4 trips. It's bringing it to the curb. Well, it's 2 trips, bringing it to the curb and bringing it back. It could be a real hazard. It could be a real risk for falls, especially when the weather does turn. The folks who are in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s who have lived in this community for decades, want to age in place. It's hard enough in colonial type homes, but to somehow avoid the risk of falls outside to drag, you know, the garbage cans in and out could be helpful to helping them stay in place and not get injured. So I would like to suggest that that's, you know, it's very important to really know what the percentage is of the seniors in our community or those becoming seniors. I don't know what the age is, how it's defined. And then those that are 5 years before, whatever, who have lived here for a while, it's pretty important to keep that in mind as well.
It's 65 and under.
65, okay, thank you. The other thing is we have lots of wildlife here. Skunks, we saw raccoons, you know, we've got mice, we've got all kinds of things here. And I worry that if the trash at the curbside gets knocked over, gets pulled apart, it's not just having the trash at the curbside that affects our city of beautiful homes. It's what happens to that trash if the animals get into it. And so it's one thing when it gets disturbed in the back of your house, that's bad enough, but in the front of the house, and then if you have an elderly person or whatever is going on that's not 100% able to take care of that immediately, it doesn't mean they're irresponsible. Maybe they're away all day, you know, trash isn't pick up us in the morning, they don't get back until the evening, it's strewn all over. It doesn't reflect on them as people, it's just logistics. So that's something to please take into consideration. We do pay pretty high taxes, one of the highest, I think, in Ohio, in Cuyahoga County anyways. And so whatever the savings is, if we really have to go that route, because we do have to look at our budget, I'm very fiscally minded, and I do believe that if that's a decision we ultimately have to make, then one of the things is moving to University Heights and having this special type of trash pickup was actually kind of something like, wow, I pay high taxes, but okay, I get this really nice perk of the trash being picked up from the side of my house. It's like amazing. Okay, I don't find it confusing at all. I think you take it outside, right outside your door. You don't have to go anywhere. You can even be in your pajamas, come back in, and it magically disappears. Okay, it's like amazing. But I think, well, I pay high taxes. Okay, that's a nice perk. And I think a lot of people kind of secretly think that. So maybe not so secretly. And so if there is going to be a change and it's going to result in a significant six-figure savings, with all things considered, would the city, and I'm not asking you to answer this, but I'm asking you to keep this question as part of the consideration, might the city consider sharing the cost savings with the taxpayer? So while it could save the city $400,000, you know, would they consider splitting that with the taxpayer and saving something to show we're kind of giving something up, but getting something back? Who's laughing? You like that laughing, huh?
Good.
I'm trying to be creative. Okay, thanks, Sheila. So, and I do agree also with the, if there's a better way to collect the recyclables. I don't think it's one system with the blue container or another system without. Maybe like, I think it was Mr. Pearl suggested, to have a more clarity on what can go into, maybe even a sticker on the blue container that says number 5, yes, you know, these are the yeses, these are the nos. And then people are very clear of what types of plastic can go or in or whatever it is that's being collected. So I think we can get creative with it. I had one more thing that I had mentioned a while ago, but I'm not sure that this is, whether or not this is appropriate. But from out of town, there was a model that I found fascinating, and this had to be like 30 years ago. They were very advanced, I think, in their trash collection. But each resident of the city, it was in Grand Rapids, Michigan, each person had a trash can, big trash can allotted to them. If they needed more because they had a big family, they just paid more for that can, and a recyclable can. And when and they were allowed to just fill that trash can, otherwise they had to pay more. But the recyclables that were taken out did not count towards the solid waste. And so it served two purposes. One is it was a nice incentive for people to actually recycle. And the other is it helped people be more mindful of what they put in the trash. Okay, and maybe to use something that in a different, repurpose it before they decided to put it in, that it might go into another bag that would cost more money. So that's just for whatever it's worth. And I thank you very much for letting me speak tonight. I apologize for not realizing there was a sign up.
No worries. And for anyone else who also did not realize that there is a sign up, I'm going through the list of individuals who have, I've completed the list of individuals who have pre-registered. I'm now going through the chat list. I see Sheila Hubman, I've already added you to the list with your hand up as well. And then I'll ask verbally if there's anybody else who's present who'd like to speak. So going down that list and continuing, I have Tegan, 2227 Edgerton. If you'd like to speak, you have the floor now.
Hello, yes, I am Tegan at 2227 Edgerton. Actually, I'm Catherine. It's that's my son's name. I don't know how to change it on Zoom. So I can be Tegan as well. I would like to echo some of the things that I've heard by some of the other residents, that I do appreciate the city looking at this and trying to be fiscally sound and trying to save us money. That's great. What I didn't see, and I'm sorry I wasn't at the other meeting, is any input out to all the residents as to how they feel about this. So I think we heard mention of, yeah, you know, we really need a survey, because you can tell we have, you know, some people say, hey, I've had problems. Other people say, no, I haven't had problems. So I guess it's a little disconcerting to me that the city hasn't taken that on more as something to consider when you're talking about eliminating a service. So I don't know if that was discussed before in your other meeting, but I guess I would just like to.
It was. It was, and in fact, it's one of the recommendations of the study. Towards the end of the study, they list several of the survey suggestions, or excuse me, study suggestions, of which survey was one.
Yeah, the subject of the survey did come up, and I would stress that if we were to do a survey, that it would need to be scientific, that make sure that you have a true cross-section sampling, as opposed to that there are things that about surveys where you need to make sure that they are handled appropriately, so that your data is in fact scientific and useful.
Well, everybody gets their magazine.
Right, but that's not scientific. That if everybody gets the magazine, but only some people respond, then that's not really, that doesn't really give you a scientific measure of what the community's position.
That is true, but at least it shows that our elected officials do care, and that they're taking that step to find out what the community wants, rather than just, okay, looking at fiscally, because this is a service that would be taken away.
Well, it would be changed. We're not ending trash pickup.
You're not ending it, but for some of us, you know, who have a hill, or who it's difficult, and it has to be heard.
Yeah.
And it's, I guess I'd like to also say, you know, when I moved to University Heights, I did realize that there were high taxes, and those taxes come partially because of the schools. And okay, I'm okay with that. I'm okay paying for our schools because the state doesn't fund it properly. And part of that tax might go to garbage pickup. And I like other people seem not to care, but I don't like going through Cleveland Heights and seeing trash strewn all over the tree lawns because the animals get into them. So those would be some of my concerns. As
I'd like to address that. Nobody is suggesting that we do it Cleveland Heights style. Cleveland Heights puts bags on the curb. They prohibit cans. That's not what we're looking at. We're looking at a curbside fully automated with cans and without having bags loose on the curb. Cleveland Heights doesn't like, Cleveland Heights is looking to move on from that too. I have it on good word. They're doing a similar trash study, and they're looking at doing something similar to what's proposed here. What we would be doing would look a lot more like what Beechwood and South Euclid do, where there's 2 single cans with wheels that are easily maneuverable and are taken out, and that's all that's down there. There aren't piles of bags, there aren't loose items outside of the cans. It's very orderly. 2 cans in front of each house, one for recycling, one for your rubbish.
Okay.
Okay.
That's good, because when I did look at the study, and it said, like, as you were saying, like scientific, that in this study, they didn't look at the satisfaction and performance of the programs that yielded the averages above that they used. But they, just because of the sheer number of these programs, it says that you can assume that people are satisfied with them. So I guess.
Thank you. Was there anything else that you wanted to add?
You know, just I would like to add one other thing. I do really appreciate having the service in the back, and I hope we could keep it. And I hope, as well as being fiscally looking at things, we also look at what the community wants, and seriously look at what the community wants, and not and find a way to make that survey reach as many people as possible.
Everybody gets the magazine.
Catherine, aka Tegan, thank you so much. I appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Molly Graziano, 2600 Fenwick, you have the floor. Molly, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm always that door gets me every time. Okay, I'm new to this conversation. I was not at the last meeting. I did look at the study. I like Ari, and I think there was another gentleman, maybe Nathan from Charney, talked about they had lived in other areas, and I've also lived in other areas and spent my whole life with curbside pickup. Never gave it a second thought. Never affected house values or anything like that. Schools obviously were a bigger issue than trash things. And as a funny thing, again, somebody who's been here for about 10 years, the other gentlemen seem to be here a little bit sooner. When we were looking, again, and we did look at the taxes, and we did see that the taxes were high, but this is someplace that we wanted to live. And my realtor said, oh, but they'll come pick up your trash in the back. And I go, for that much in taxes? That's like, not funny. And my husband and I actually laughed. We're like, that's not why I'm buying a house here. Like, I'm more worried about, do people keep their houses up? Are there water problems in the basements? Things like that made a bigger impact for us in looking at the value of our home. I certainly understand the aesthetic piece, but I think, Mayor, you already addressed, we are looking at doing this in cans, in an automated system. My sister is just switching to this in her neighborhood, and the contractor that they're using sent them, every neighbor, a packet of how everything's going to work. It's all laid out very neatly for them. Because again, anytime you have change, we know that it's difficult. But I do think it's important to really look overall. A couple folks have mentioned that the savings isn't that much. And I'm going to take a little bit of issue with that. Because when you look at, it might not look a lot per house or, whatever the case may be, but when you look collectively over the course of a period of time, in the way things are going economically and the way that, city and local governments and regional governments are being starved of funds, I do think that the cost savings is important. because I think I don't want to, you know, rob Peter to pay Paul to say, oh, I want my trash cans picked up in the back. Oh, but by the way, we can't fix the water in the basements. You know, like that doesn't make sense to me. I do think two things I've heard are the issues with the seniors, and I do think that's an important thing to address. I'm not sure how the ADA works. I don't know enough about it, but I think that's one place I want to kind of flip that and say, well, as a community, if that is the case, then we go to curbside. There's an opportunity for the community to stand up and help those residents that need that help. We still get the cost savings, and that really would be able to engage, you know, community members or maybe kids who are doing things for community service. They could adopt people to help them with their trash cans and things like that. So I don't know that that's an either or, because also my parents who lived to almost 80 lived where they had curbside pickup, and they actually made arrangements. They had a private contractor. And the people that were older in the neighborhood, they did come up and get their trash cans for the folks that couldn't make it down to the end of the street. So I think that's a workable thing. I did like that the study said that it will increase our recycling, because I do think I noticed when I look at comments and things on Nextdoor and our discussion page, recycling is a really important thing to the community. And I think going from a 5% to a 10 to 15% recycle rate is excellent. And I think that would maybe, you know, would bring some of those, you know, good feelings too. We'd be doing a more effective job recycling, which I know is important to people. What are the other things here? So I guess what I would just like to say is, if we can save this kind of money and we can be able to be more fiscally responsible with the city funds and be able to address some of the other infrastructure issues that we have. But I do have a question, like where will the money go? What I don't want to happen is I don't want us to make this change and then it just gets absorbed, you know, kind of like, oh, well, now I've got an extra $20 in my pocket, so it's just going to get absorbed.
A bigger magazine.
Yeah, I've heard this point a couple times, Molly. I hope you don't mind me interrupting. But,
no, please.
But you know, on the question of where does the money go,
right.
I think that in the big picture, what we're really looking at is how are we going to pay for this if we keep it? I don't know. Presently, given the money that we have, if we're going to keep this program, there's a major investment that needs to be made in it. We need to buy new Kubotas because we haven't been buying replacement ones. We need to buy new garbage trucks because we are behind on the replacement schedule for that as well. Those new garbage trucks are about $220,000 a piece. We're looking at an investment over the next 3 years of $750,000 in the equipment we use to do backyard pickup. I mean, how are we going to pay for that?
Answer me this. To me, this would look good, Mayor, for you to be able to say as a community, when you're going out and looking for grant money, say, listen, as a community.
There's no grant money for garbage truck.
No, hear me out. No, I know there's no, I'm totally on board with the change, but I think if I were, you know, someone, I work in the nonprofit sector. If you are going out and looking for federal grants for other things, to say, look, we have looked at places that we can save. We are looking to be fiscally responsible. We do recognize that, you know, we were able to save however much with our garbage program that, you know, is going to help cover other services, but now we need to be able to, you know, get for A, B, C, D, or E, whatever the case may be. I also, because I do know that people who give you grants, whether they be federal, state, or they like to see that you're being fiscally responsible before they start passing out money to people. And I do know that infrastructure issues in the Heights are a concern. So this might give you some gravitas, if you will, when you are going out to say, look, we really are as a community pulling together to do what we need to do to keep our community beautiful. And we are making some small sacrifices to get some bigger returns down the line. So I just want to say that I'm on board. I'm with it 100%. And I'm happy to help the community, educate the community, or you know, whatever needs to be done.
Okay. Well, thank you, Molly. I didn't want to seem as if I was arguing with you. I was just trying to fill in some information.
No, I'm still learning, so it's all good.
No, that's fine. And the thing is I can assure you that the city is fiscally responsible. Yes. We do not have we are living within our means. We don't have a deficit. We did, our income is down this year because of the pandemic and the economic downturn, but working with council, we cut $1.08 million from the budget in June. Grant, we didn't pave any streets this year. We didn't buy a dump truck that we were going to buy this year. But even before those cuts, there were things that we didn't buy because we couldn't necessarily afford certain things. Like we could have used 2 new police cars this year to stay on schedule. We didn't get those things. The fire prevention unit to two new fire vehicles. We didn't buy those, and we haven't been investing in the garbage. So the thing is, what is that?
Yeah, because somebody muted. Not me.
Okay, I know. Oh, okay. Simply that I want to cast aside any idea that if we change our garbage pickup, that means a reduction in taxes. My
Right. No, I don't think it should.
My concern is that if we keep this trash pickup, how we are able to deliver the other things we need to deliver without a tax increase or some sort of fee increase on trash pickup, which I don't think the community has a stomach for, and I don't blame them. You know, we pay a lot in taxes already, and to ask for more to provide the same amount of service is a big ask.
I think we all agree. We live here. We know that what the tax rate is. I don't need a refund or anything like that. I'm actually one person who would like to fix the storm sewers and things like that.
Yeah.
Water in the basement, that truly affects the value of my home and affects the value of the community, because as soon as you get a reputation for having water in the basements, that does not help. So we fixed it, but anyway, the whole list.
Which street do you live on, Molly?
I live on Fenwick.
Fenwick, okay.
Yeah. So I'm on board. No, I don't need money back. I need the other pieces of the infrastructure. And like I said, so I'm happy to help, and maybe Ari or anybody else who needs to help people understand that, you know, we can do it. Change is always difficult. It's not pleasant, especially the folks who have lived here. I appreciate why they don't want to have things changed. But these are difficult times, and we have to make, you know, difficult decisions. Like you said, it's not that we're not eliminating the service. We're just changing how we do it in order to save money. So that's all.
Molly, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you wanted to add before I turn the floor over to Sheila?
Nope, it's all yours. Thank you.
Oh, okay, thanks so much. Sheila Hubman, you have the floor.
Sheila, we can't hear you. Unmute yourself.
Thank you. On April the 5th of 1965, when my husband and I moved into 2528 Ashurst, we thought we were moving into our carrying outhouse. If they take away backyard pickup, we won't be able to stay. We're 80 years old. We live on a hill. We live in Lower University Heights with all the beautiful yards, the hills, the houses set up. We won't be able to stay. Neither one of us can manage taking garbage cans down icy, snowy driveways. And before you say plow your driveway, my driveway is plowed probably before any of yours. We're first on our plowman's route, and it's plowed right down flat. But, you know, we cannot manage taking out our own rubbish. I appreciate Ms. Sachs' thoughts. You know, we are elderly. We don't like to think of ourselves, but we are 80. We fall, we don't heal. We love University Heights. In order to stay here, we not only doubled the size of our original house, we bought the house next door when we needed more room. I did not want to move out of University Heights. Trust me, backyard pickup is an issue. Thank you.
Sheila, thank you so much for the comments. Let me see, next on our list is Richard. Richard, we're circling back to you. And then Paul, I saw your hand up. I'm going to come to you after Richard.
Thanks, Justin.
Thank you, Justin. My name is Richard Kenny. I live at 4105 Meadowbrook, which is right near the five-way intersection with Miramar and Washington. My wife and I have lived here for 32 years, raised our kids here, and we have always appreciated the pickup from the back of the house. There are a number of factors that I'll go through very quickly. Other people have touched on them, but for reinforcement purposes and maybe to add a few things. Beginning with convenience, obviously not having to take your garbage to the front is significant. Now, if you're young, maybe it's not so significant. It's nice to go out of town and have your garbage, you know it's going to get picked up in 2 days and you don't do anything. You go out of town for 4 days, you come back, everything's been taken care of. The aesthetics, they speak for themselves. I would like at this point, though, to throw something else into the mix. And our last speaker talked about what was important to her. And I think, unfortunately, in this day and age, everything's about me, my rights, and what's in it for me. And we need to look at this from a community standpoint and say, everybody has different preferences, and we can reach out and serve those preferences as best we can. But it shouldn't be, I used to get it without it, so I don't need it. And that means nobody else should need it. We need to look at this. For example, I don't care about the snow removal on the sidewalks. In fact, to me, it does more damage to my lawn than anything else. And I've gone out and snow blown from one end of Meadowbrook at the 5 Point all the way to Glendon to make sure the kids can get to school. But that's not a service that, I would raise my hand and say, I care to pay for it. But I pay for it willingly, knowing that for other people it's important. And so I would say to everybody, don't look at this through some narrow perspective of what's good for me. Look at it for the entire community and be willing to work in a way that allows somebody to get something that you don't care that much about. And in return, you get something they don't care much about. Going back to this, the aesthetics speak for themselves. I don't need to say any more than anybody else has said. I think there's a safety traffic issue, at least for me on Meadowbrook and on Silsby and Washington. We have people picking up kids for school, and even when they're not, there's cars that are parked on one side of Meadowbrook. And for that truck to come down, it's going to have to stop at each apron and serve both sides of the street. And that's a traffic issue. You have a situation where now the truck goes and parks itself in a place where it's out of the way, and all these small carts come to it, and they don't make a clog up the road or make a problem with respect to traffic. And that's particularly true with the main arteries. Cost. I mentioned this 2 weeks ago when I joined the city council meeting, and I have to confess, I don't know specifically what the cost is per person. It was represented to me that it was $60 per house per year. If that is the case, that's $5 a month or $1.25 a week. I pay over $9,000 a year in taxes. I know a lot of that goes to the schools. I know a lot of it goes to the county. But there's a saying, money has no face. If I have to dig in my pocket and pay out $9,200 in taxes, what's $1.25 a week? It's nothing. And to answer the mayor and everybody else, I'll pay the extra. Go ahead and add it on. It doesn't make a lot of sense for that kind of money. If in fact those are the numbers, and I have not heard anybody say otherwise. But it just pales in comparison. You're not saving anything.
Yeah,
and conflating, for example, conflating the recycling and the trash issue. You can fix both of those independently. They don't rise and fall together. So for the person who has a problem with the garbage cans, you can go out and buy yourself one of those big cans, and you can buy yourself a blue can. and take care of the problem that way. I think majority of people have had animals try and get at their garbage and found a way to defeat the animal. And so I don't think that's a valid reason to change what we're doing here.
You can't, there's a limit to the size of cans. You can only have up to 39 gallons. I have a larger can. I wasn't able to use it.
Well, they don't pick the cans up anymore, it's my understanding. Jeff, if you help me out here, we have to put them in bags and they lift the individual bags out. So it wouldn't seem to make any difference. And I would be confused as to why a senior or even anyone else would be schlepping a large can, 2 large cans down to the street and saying that you can't use a large can to have pickup at the side of your house. We can work through the only question is there a savings? Nothing else, to me, nothing else really strikes a chord here. Is there a savings significant enough to justify doing this? And I haven't seen that, and I still haven't heard anything that suggests that it's other than $1.25 a week a residence. That's it.
Thank you so much for your comments.
Councilperson Gould, I feel like there's some things we do need to get out here just to perhaps answer the residents' questions. For instance, we have a local ordinance presently limiting the size of your can to 30 gallons, and that's still enforced. If you have a larger container, it's not going to be emptied, and our service employees do not reach into your can blindly looking for bags. If you have a larger can, it will likely not be emptied, or only the bag on the top will be taken. So I would caution against anybody thinking that they could buy a larger can and that's somehow going to be serviced presently. Also, there's a weight limit where the can, once it's full, can't weigh more than 50 pounds. So even if there's space, if your garbage is very heavy, you can't put more in there than that, because our service employees will lift the can, provided it's 50 pounds or less, to empty it into the back of the Kubota. And if it weighs more than 50 pounds, they're not going to try to hurt themselves maneuvering that can, and we don't want them to. You know, that's for their protection as well. So
I'm a little confused on this, because I know I have neighbors who had small packages in their cans and were told that they were not going to reach in and pull those out from the bottom. Everything has to be consolidated into larger bags because they reach in and just take the bags. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I'm just sharing what my neighbor's experience has been. And we have for a while now been making sure that we don't, if we have 4 or 5 small bags where we go around and clear out waste baskets and such, we put that into one bigger bag, and maybe there's 3 or 4 big bags in there. And I've witnessed the person come and just reach in, take the bags out, not pick up the whole can. So okay. I don't know.
Yeah, well, there was issued an order that there be no loose trash in relation to the COVID-19 emergency. So people putting in very small bags or using like an old Target bag or something like that, that's not going to get picked up. That it does need to be placed into a larger sealed bag. So that may be consistent with your neighbor's experience.
Yeah. Well, let me ask this: would it not be feasible to simply go to the larger cans for some people and have those just filled with larger bags and just take those bags out?
There will be a limit to what they'll reach in and grab. If you have a smaller can and it's 45 gallons instead of the 32, they can easily reach the first 2 bags without leaning into the can. If you have a 96-gallon cart, like we're suggesting with the automation, the bottom 2 bags you're not going to be able to reach.
Understood.
Okay. Richard, is there anything else you'd like to add before I move on to Paul?
Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Paul, you have the floor.
Thanks, Justin. I've lived here for 42 years. same house. I happen to love University Heights. And there's a reason why I love University Heights for a couple of reasons. I love the library system, hands down. And I'm a kind of guy who just loves the little things in life. And that little thing is a big thing to me. It's the guys who pick up my garbage. And I'll tell you why. Because it's convenience. Now, I don't know how you put a dollar amount on convenience. But I do. I'll do it in such a respect is that I would go out and hire somebody to do it because that's how much of a convenience is. Now, I'm okay right now physically, but I just want everyone who is listening to think about when you're not okay physically and when you're going to have something happen to you that is going to affect your legs. And it's the middle of the winter. Are you going to be so happy to take those and drive them, put them down at the end of the driveway? That's number one. Number two is, I looked at the report and maybe I missed it. What happens to those people who work for Jeff who are no longer going to be needed? So maybe somebody can address that also. The dollar savings, it's interesting. 42 years, we found the money to do this. And now the 43rd year, we're having problems. I'm a little confused about that one. We made it up into 42 years since I've been here doing it. But now, gee, now it's a serious problem. Also is, I just love the idea when I drive through Beechwood, Pepper Pike, or whoever, high-end communities, and they have this garbage in front of their house. I mean, it blows my mind how they can do that. I mean, I just don't understand it. That's what makes our community a little bit different than every other community. I don't care about, sure, I care about the taxes, no question about it. They're high, no question about it. That's one of the services that I'm willing to pay for. Now, and when you look at particular subjects, this one in particular, we all look through shaded glasses. We think in terms of, most people do not think of the greater good. Most people think of, what is it going to do for me? And I tend to believe that if we took a vote, and that's my next point that I want to bring up, I think this issue is so important that I would like it to be on the ballot the next election. If the mayor and the council think they're going to go through with this, I'd like this to be on the ballot, if that's possible. Sorry, I have a dog, and it's a little dog. It's 10 pounds, and it goes crazy sometimes. So, Molly, please. Sorry, forgive me. But that ballot issue to me is very important, because this isn't an individual. This is not going to affect individuals. This is going to affect every single person in this city. And I think every single person in this city should have a say as to what we do in this regard. A couple of other things that I'd like to mention. It was interesting. It was last year, I was going down Fairmont Boulevard. The wind happened to be, it was probably about 25, 30 miles an hour. You couldn't get down Fairmont Boulevard. And the reason you couldn't get down Fairmont Boulevard was that particular day, they had picked up a trash by that thing, whatever you want to call that truck, and they deposited the receptacle. Well, all of those receptacles were floating down. They were all on Fairmont Boulevard. It was a tremendous hazard, physical hazard.
Justin, could you let him know we're having a hard time hearing?
Okay, can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay. And if we are going to save some money, I want to know up front, what do you plan to do with the money we're going to save? And how much are you actually going to save? And I don't understand. Why are we talking about it now? If I recall correctly, and maybe I'm wrong, this has never been an issue. And all of a sudden now we're hit by the COVID-19. I understand that. And I understand the tax. And I understand the lack of dollars. I'm fully aware of that. But it's really quite interesting. Didn't we have some problems any time in the past? It would run into some financial problems. But it seems to me this is one of the staples of University Heights. It's one of these services that you could actually point to and say, hey, you know what? This community is different than every other community around us, which happens to be a good thing. And as far as the other is the idea of a number of us go away. We go away for 2 days, we go away for 4 days, we go away for 5 days. We never have to worry. I never have to be concerned. So what am I going to do now if I go away? Do I get somebody else? It's nice that people are going to volunteer. You think they're going to volunteer in a snowstorm? You think they're going to volunteer when the wind is 50 miles an hour and the rain is incessantly beating? No, they're not. I mean, this is a to me, it's a very, very important issue. It's nothing to slough off about. I appreciate what the council has done. I appreciate what Justin has done in regards to having these meetings. There's no question about it. I appreciate it a great deal. And we can air what we're thinking. If I had a vote, and I want to vote, I want a ballot issue. I want to be able to express my opinion on a vote of whether we should keep this or not. And I tend to believe most individual citizens in this particular community want to have that vote. I just get, it seems like I raise my voice, but I'm passionate about this. This is one of those services that I'm very, very passionate about in this city. And do me a favor, don't do it. Thanks. Have a great day, guys.
Paul, thank you so much for your comments today and also at the previous meeting. Neil, before I saw in the chat that you would like to for me to return to you, Mr. Gould.
Go ahead.
Okay, it was for me. And I want to, Jackie Gould, I wanted to thank Richard for his comments. I think they were very much on point as far as having the people in this meeting and our community to think about the general good and not the specific issue related to different people. And for those who think that this is an easy fix, if you think about the fact that if you stand at the end of my driveway, you can't even see my garage because of the hill that is in my driveway, and my garage is at the back of my property. So you can imagine what that looks like in the winter. even plowed, even salted. It's pretty dangerous. So I said that last time, but I wanted to repeat that. But the point I really want to talk about a little bit, and what I think we could do a lot better at, is recycling. I don't know that these two issues need to be together. That's one. And two, I considered myself probably 2 or 3 years ago to be a great recycler. You know, if it had a triangle on it and it had a number on it, I was all over it, and I was putting it in our recycle bin, only to find out that that's not proper. Just because it can be recycled doesn't mean it should be recycled in our city. And I think we don't do a good job in helping people understand that. And so I'd like to at least put that out there as one of the things that, aside from the cost of curbside versus, backyard pickup, that's another issue which I've already spoken about. But the recycle issue, I think, is something that people need to be more educated about, and they're not at this point. I know I wasn't a few years ago, and I was with a group of women. We met together and we were all like, well, you mean we can't recycle those clamshells that we get in the grocery store? Well, no, you can't. And I think that most people who recycle would want their things to be recycled and not put in the trash. So I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, yeah.
Yes, I'd like to add one thing. I'd like to address the mayor's comment about the statistical analysis and how to go about the survey. My background, as I've mentioned in other situations, is that it was in technical publishing. I was a technical publisher for 50 years. I'm formally trained in creating these kinds of studies. I'm formally trained in creating the kinds of surveys that you're talking about doing. And on one hand, you're correct. There's a science to it that must be adhered to. On the other hand, it's going about it backwards to say you can cherry pick a population outside of the size of University Heights and come up with anything really meaningful. It has to be a both and, not an either or. And I think that you can, by having a survey with a discussion, you'll get better information, you'll get a better perspective, and you'll have more valid information to go by than if you, for example, hire somebody to cherry pick a group of people who are supposedly representative of the population and have them give their opinion or what have you to represent everyone. So I think that it needs to be scientific, it needs to be accurate, but there's a right way to go about it, and it's a both and. And the other thing I'd like to say is that in terms of the age range, as Richard pointed out, college students, considered as part of the population, skews that unrealistically. And I think that we need to take into consideration, as others have pointed out again, what's good for the community, not necessarily what's good for the individual. That's what I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Neil, would you be open to members of council or perhaps me reaching out to you if we were to do a survey to kind of discuss the form and questions that were asked, so that in as much as we can kind of abide by, certain standards that would be set to make sure that the questions that are asked are really getting to the point of the issue?
I would be glad to help out with it. It's not a simple matter, but I would be very happy to help to create that questionnaire. As I said, in the overview, I think we should have a page of pros and a page of cons, and then the survey that covers all of the bullet points. And what you would have is a larger participation than the groups that are either here or that read about it on the website or what have you and don't have an idea of what's going on. So I would be very happy to help you.
Thank you so much. Before I looked through our chats, and I believe I've got everybody who would like to speak there. If I've missed anyone, please let me know. Feel free to unmute yourself now. And I'm looking through the participants that are on screen to see if there's anybody else who would like to speak with us who's present. I'll also open it up to any members of council who would like to make any comments at this time. Anybody at all before I adjourn?
Yes, Richard.
Ed,
Oh, go ahead.
this is Patty Hutchinson. Yeah, I agree with just about with Sheila and several of the other people talking about keeping the backyard pickup. You know, we live on a hill. We are not elderly, but it is, you know, it would be a hazard going up and down the hill with the trash cans. It is a draw to University Heights to have the backyard pickup. I know I grew up here. I moved back here 5 years ago, and that was one of the reasons, is not because of the backyard pickup, but also the services that there are here in University Heights. But you know, we do pay high taxes, but I'm willing to pay those taxes for these services we have here. And I moved back here because, you know, I like the city and I love, you know, the services here. So I would not be, you know, I don't want to pay any more in taxes, but I would not be opposed to paying a little bit more to keep that backyard pickup. I did live in Cleveland pretty much my whole marriage. And we were able to move back into the suburbs when they lifted the residency rule. But in Cleveland, they did start that whole curbside pickup with, you know, you had to get the cans. They said everything was going to be, you know, more, you know, streamlined. But they slipped in that it was $25 a month, and it was into our water bill. It was built into the water bill. So there were problems with picking up the garbage. The cans were always askew all over the street. People would, you know, take other people's cans, but they were assigned to your address. So there were problems with that. So you do end up paying for that service. And right now I know it's costly to keep these little, you know, the little trucks and the big truck, but I don't see where there's going to be a huge cost savings. So I think, you know, a lot of people like it here in University Heights for this very reason, and to keep the streets clean. I mean, we don't have what you see in Cleveland and in Lakewood or Beechwood, where those cans are out all day long. And some people, we work. So when you leave, they have to stay out for 8 hours a day. So when you get home, you know, you have to bring it back, but it still looks bad that whole day. So that's my main concern. And, you know, I moved back here and we have our 4 kids back here, and, you know, I'd like to stay. But that's a big, bad draw. I mean, that's not a good draw for me. That's a bad thing if you do take it away. So I think that is pretty much, and another thing with holidays, when you have extra garbage, those cans, and I just know from experience living in Cleveland, you have extra garbage that doesn't fit into those cans. So you're still going to have extra bags on the tree lawn. There's just no way to get around it unless you know, it's going to continue to pile up in your backyard. So that was another problem we had in Cleveland. So I am completely opposed to it. And I do think you do need to have a survey and include everyone in the city that wants to be part of it to put their opinions down and say, you know, write down the pros and the cons. So I think that that's only fair to all the residents. And I think that's it.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Patty, thank you so much for your contributions as well.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining.
Justin.
Yes.
This is Richard. I was reminded of something that I left out that is rather important. And what reminded me was the discussion about the size and the weight of these new cans, and they wouldn't be able to be handled in the way we now handle them. And I'm thinking in the winter on Meadowbrook, for weeks, if not months, there is anywhere from 12 to 18 to 24 foot amount of snow on my tree lawn deposited by the plows. And I have in the past gone and dug out the fire hydrant just so that it can be sighted if needed. Now, how do I bring that can down the driveway through the apron and then lift it up on there. If it's too heavy for the sanitation department to do that, it seems to me it would be too heavy for me.
Thank you, Richard. Yes, I keep a notation of people's comments from this meeting and last, and I know that's something that you had mentioned at our last meeting, so I'll put a double check mark next to that one.
Thank you.
Of course. Anybody else that'd like to
Adam.
address the,
Yes, I would like to.
who's this?
If I could add a point,
Jeffrey Pearl.
Oh, sure, Jeffrey.
Okay. One of the things I wanted to say, I've agreed with all the seniors present, certainly, because we're in that group now. There's a lot to be said about that. And when I hear it talked about the percentage of seniors in University Heights as opposed to other communities, that irked me, because I don't think that's supposed to be a reason for making a decision. And if it were being put to a vote, and if you had the majority of people who felt, well, we'll save a few dollars and better we should do that, and if it's irritating to a minority of people in the community, well, that's just too bad. And I just don't think that's right. And frankly, it is to everybody's interest to have a better looking community. So I'm agreeing with Neil and Mrs. Gould. I didn't catch your first name. Richard, Sheila, Patty, Paul, and I may have missed some others, but I think I think we are a good representation of the seniors in the community, as well as others who have talked about the need for not just representation, but to help make the community look better and continue to be the city of beautiful homes. Frankly, because everybody recognizes that University Heights does have higher taxes, and I have heard repeatedly how people are willing to pay those higher taxes to live here, I would feel strongly that whatever the percentage of seniors that live in University Heights, if services like that are taken away, they're going to start to look at other areas where they might not have that particular service, but they will have lower taxes. So it is something to be considered. But I do appreciate the time that you gave me before and now. Thank you.
Jeffrey, thanks for those additional comments. This is not the last meeting that we will have. We'll have another hearing which will allow individuals to make comments. And as I've said, I've tried to keep a running list of concerns that individuals share, and so that I can disseminate those to council. And with that, unless there's anybody else that would like to speak or members of council that would like to comment.
if you could add one more item to the list.
Sure.
In a way, this is an indirect cost that's being put on the residents because the residents is already invested in the cans that they have. And one can may not suffice for each household, and there might be additional cans necessary. And why should we go and have to invest in additional cans in order to have essentially a service that was being done taken away?
Thank you for that comment. With that, we will adjourn. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, and have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks all.